Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to everybody here live at Meridian here in New York City. To all those watching across the globe on the live stream, welcome to the All Daf Siyum on Mesechta Succah. My name is Moshe Schwed, director of the All Daf platform, and on behalf of the OU and its leadership, Mr. Moshe Bain, who's here, and Rabbi Moshe Hauer, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Meridian and Mr. Ralph Succah for hosting this Siyum. All Daf is dedicated in memory of Meir Ben Chaim Waknin from Casablanca, Morocco, who unfortunately passed away from COVID-19. He was very involved in the community, had tremendous respect for Talmidei Chacham and Rabbanim, and was a true family man. Yehi Zichrei Baruch. The Siyum is dedicated by the Goldberg family. Thank you, Mr. Josh Goldberg, who's here live in attendance. In memory of his brother, Elliot, who miraculously, with a genetic disease, lived for 47 years. From what I understand, that disease has a life expectancy of 5 years old. His parents, through 250 hospitalizations, took care of Elliot, and he always persevered and stayed positive, something which is very necessary when learning Daf Yomi day in, day out. We'd like to keep this program short and concise, so I'm going to leave the speaking to the wonderful guest speakers who are here today. But one quick vart. Someone shared with me once something from Rav Pam. It's actually printed in a sefer called Meridian, and the title to this article or speech is called Divrei Tanchumin L'Loimdei Daf Yomi. So I'm not going to get into what he was trying to console them. That will take too much time. But he started off with something very interesting. We had recently in the Gemara a discussion between Sasin and Simcha, and there's what to talk about exactly who Sasin is, who Simcha is. Or Pam said that we say in davening, Smechim Mitzesam, the Sasin B'Vayam. The lashon of tefillah we say in Shacharis on Shabbos. It talks about the tzvah Shamayim. What is the difference between Sasin and Simcha? Both talk about happiness, joy. What's the difference? So he quotes the Malbim. The Malbim was well known for differentiating between common words, synonyms. And he says the difference is Simcha is the inner joy, the hergish that a person feels in his heart. And Sasin is the way a person brings out that joy in an outward fashion. A person sings, dances, makes a suda, and he invites his friends to join with him. He says when a person starts Daf Yomi, he may have that inner simcha, the smechim mitzesam, as he embarks on the journey, that his chayvos, that unternehmung, that a person takes upon himself to start when he starts learning and he starts the journey. But v'sasim b'vayam, as he goes through Mesechta after Mesechta, and he feels that joy and he completes Mesechtas, then he invites his friends and he makes Siyumim and enjoys the accomplishments in an outward fashion. So to all those who are here and across the globe who are learning Daf Yomi, Smechim Mitzesam, but we've come to Asasim B'Vayam, finishing Mesechta Sukkah right before Sukkahs. It's amazing how the calendar works out in these ways, to finish Mesechta Sukkah right before Sukkahs. As I mentioned before, we'd like to thank Meridian and Mr. Succah for opening up this boardroom, beautiful boardroom, to host the Siyum. And I'd like to call upon Rabbi Elefant to deliver Divrei Bracha.
Thank you, Rabbi Schwed. Deserves so much credit. What started off as a dream that we had in beginning a shir online for people to participate who want to go on the trip that Rabbi Schwed just mentioned became such an incredible reality with this All Daf platform where we have 50,000 people who bought into the app and we Baruch Hashem have thousands and thousands of people listening to the many different shiurim, the daf shir and associated shiurim. It's really a tremendous chus that he has, and that we at the OU have been able to begin this journey. And we thank people such as our host tonight here at Meridian, Mr. Succah, and his entire staff for hosting us, and I guess for recognizing the importance and the value of this project. As we come to the end of Mesechta Succah, and we stand in the last couple of days of the year before Rosh Hashanah, I was thinking, is there a common theme that we could connect the Mesechta and Rosh Hashanah and maybe the Parsha of the week? The Torah begins this week, Atem Nitzavim Hayoim. The halacha is that we always read Parshas Nitzavim before the new year. And of course, many Mefarshim ask, why? And the answer, we had today at the OU a meeting of the leadership with the staff as we prepare for Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Hauer, who's sitting here, and many of us spoke about the theme that when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, the Hayoim, that we're going to stand in front of Rosh Hashanah, Nitzavim Hayoim, in order for us to be able to stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have to have every member of Klal Yisrael, L'sheichem, Shiftechem, Mechoitze, Veitzacha, Shoyev, Meimecha, every member of Klal Yisrael has to participate. That's when we could be Nitzavim in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why the pasuk concludes, Kol Ish Yisrael. All of us are really just one. All of us are just one person, because each one of us comes with our own talents and with our own strengths and our own weaknesses. Together, Kol Ish Yisrael as one unit standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And actually, for those of you who have already peaked at the end of the Mesechta, that's the last words of our Mesechta. The last words of our Mesechta is Amar Abaya, Toiv Oil Rosh Oil Shchenoi, Toiv L'Tzadik Toiv L'Shchenoi, Shenemra, Imrut Tzadik Ki Toiv, Ki Free Ma'aleim Yechelu. Imrut Oil Tzadik. If you're a tzaddik, it's not Toiv L'Tzadik, it's not only good for you, but it's Toiv L'Shchenoi, it's for everybody you come in association. And I once saw a beautiful word. Why does it say Toiv L'Tzadik and Toiv L'Shchenoi? It should have said Toiv L'Tzadik V'L'Shchenoi. And the answer is, if a tzaddik is the one that helped somebody else do the right thing, so not only is it good for him for the good things that he does, but what he helps other people grow and do the right thing, for every person that did something right because of what we do, we therefore cause that we should get schar for that as well. All of their mitzvahs and all of their Torah get accredited to us as well. And that is a way to enter Rosh Hashanah. When we're looking for schusim, and we're looking for all of us to be connected, the way that we get connected is by trying to help other people do the right thing. We help other people learn Torah. And I mentioned last night that it's very interesting. All of us know that there's a mitzvah of Zeh Keli Van Veyu, the concept of Hidur mitzvah, that when one performs a mitzvah, he has to perform it in the most beautiful way possible. That's a rule that applies to every mitzvah in the Torah. But by the mitzvah of the Dalam Minim, the Torah specifies pre-Eitz Hadar. Why does the Torah specify by this mitzvah more than any other mitzvah the concept of Hidur? We already know that halacha. So I was thinking that we know that the Dalam Minim, the famous Medrash, says that the Dalam Minim represent the four types of Jews. Somebody who yesh bei Torah v'yesh bei masim tovim, yesh bei Torah v'ein bei masim tovim, until we get to the Arava, ein bei Torah v'ein bei masim tovim. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us to connect those Dalam Minim, together. Says the Torah, when we have all different types of Jews coming together, that's what I call Hadar. That's what I call beautiful. And actually, To add to that, those who learned the Mesechta know there's a very fundamental machlokes in the Mesechta between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda holds Eged min HaTorah, that the obligation to tie the lulav hadasim and aravis is a chiv midaraisa. The Rabbanan disagree, but says the Gemara in more than one place that even though the Rabbanan hold that we're not obligated to make an igud, we're not obligated to tie them together, it still should be done because it's hadar, because it's beautiful. And the question is, what's so beautiful necessarily about tying the lulav and the hadasim daravis? And perhaps the point is because hadar, that's what makes it beautiful. When we're all connected, and particularly when we're connected through learning Torah. And in fact, I just should mention there's a fantastic Samsoifer. The Samsoifer says that everybody when they go to look for an esrog, I see yeshiva guys, so we all know people spend time looking for an esrog, and they look if there's a mark, and it may be a chaser. And the halacha is, as we learned in the Mesechta, a chaser is only a disqualification on the first day of Sukkot. And if the first day of Sukkot is on Shabbos, it's not a disqualification at all. But a hadar is an issue all 7 days of Sukkot. It says the Chassam Sofer, so you bent and you bought this beautiful esrog, you spent time and resources to get this most beautiful esrog, and now you shake it the first day. And again, I give an advertisement. If you listen to the shiurim, you would have heard that the halach is you have to keep the esrog right next to the lulav. So you did it the right way. And when you come home from shul on the first day, you see that your esrog is all spotted. And where's the hadar? Says the Chassam Sofer, that is the definition of hadar. If a esrog got spotted because you were doing the mitzvah, that is what's beautiful. So if somebody gets up every morning early to learn, and he's tired, or he comes home from work at night, and instead of going home and spending time with his family, he goes to a shiur, or he spends time listening to a shiur, and he ends up going to sleep much later, and he's tired. That's hadar. That's beautiful. That's the beauty of the Daf Yomi. And particularly when it's a limud that all of Klal Yisroel, all of us who come from so many different walks of life and from so many different communities. Rabbi Schwed and I just spent time yesterday on the phone speaking to two Jews from England who listen to the shiur every day. And one friend had sent, this is not an appeal, had sent us a donation because his other friend who's listening to our shiur was just diagnosed with cancer. And we should have him in mind for refuah shlema. And he asked that maybe to give his friend who's not well some chizuk, we could spend a couple of minutes on the phone speaking to him, which we did. Jew from England, from Edgware, London, doesn't know me, I don't know him. In more likelihood, we will never meet in our entire lives. But we're all connected. We're all the atem nitzavim hayoim. And that's why the Mesechta ends. Imru tzaddik toiv. When one person does good, it influences the entire world. We all become connected through what HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at Limud HaTorah, what he wants from us to devote at least some part of our day on a daily basis. So I think that the people who are sitting here, who Baruch Hashem, I know many of you learned the Daf Yomi, the people who are participating online, who certainly are involved in the Daf Yomi, we appreciate that you're involved with us. I think the ones that probably appreciate it the most are your families. I've heard from many people who learned the Daf. I personally have been giving a shiur in the Daf for almost 32 years already. And almost every person who I ever met who learned the Daf told me that since he started learning the Daf, it changed his entire family. It changed the way his family dynamic is. And it certainly changed the community with his learning. So Baruch Hashem, we should all have that schus together. Atem Nitzavim, we need to stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with schusim. Klal Yisroel, of course, the entire world, but certainly Klal Yisroel needs tremendous schusim. Another halacha is the Tich L'Shon of Klal Yisroel. We always have to read Parshas Kisavai before Rosh Hashanah. And in Parshas Kisava, there are 98 klolos. But as we also learned in Mesechta Sukkah, at the end of Mesechta, we bring karbonis every day of Sukkot. And if you count all of those karbonis, there are 98 karbonis. By learning specifically Mesechta Sukkah and davening that we should be zoiche b'mheir b'yameinu, hopefully still this year, that we should be able to bring those 98 karbonis that are on behalf of us and on behalf of all of the world, on behalf of Klal Yisroel. We should take be zoiche to bracha, to ksiva chsima toiva, v'yamala Hashem kol mishal lebeinu l'toiva.
Thank you, Rabbi Elefant. I'd like to call upon Yisroel Simcha Weingot, who is the Maggid Shir, Tafimi Maggid Shir, at Meridian, to make the Siyum.
We'll finish the last Gemara together. Tanar Rabbanan. We learned in a Bracha, Ma'aseh ben Miriam bas Bilga. There's a story of a girl by the name of Miriam bas Bilga. Shehamira dasa v'hochavanissis esrati odecha mimalchi yavanim. Hamira dasa. She left the path of Torah, and she went and she got married to an officer from the Malchi Yavanim, from the kings amongst the Greek. Kishenichnasu Yavanim la'echol. This is evidently during Bayis Sheni when they came in before Chanukah. The Yavanim came into the Heichel. Haisam va'etes b'sandal al gavei hamizbeach. So she started kicking with her sandal on top of the mizbeach. V'amra, and she said, "Lucas, Lucas, you fox, you fox." In Yavani, Lucas means fox. Ad mosayata mechala b'maynin shel Yisroel. How long is it going to be that you're going to be using up and stealing the money of Klal Yisrael? You take our money, but yet when they're in a time of need, you don't help them. Lucas is a fox. Fox eats up kvasim, eats sheep. It's called the mizbeach. The fox eats the carbon tamid, kvasim, shana. And she was also referring to the fact that he's from Shevet Binyamin. Binyamin, it's in the chelik of Binyamin. Binyamin ze'ev yitrof, it's a zev. And you don't help them. When the Chacham heard about this ma'aseh, kavu es dabata. It explains now in the Mishnah why their tabas of this mishmar, the ring that would hold the animal in the ground, couldn't open. It was sealed. It was stuck. They had to borrow someone else's. They had that bizayim. The sasmas chalayin, and they sealed the window where they used to keep their knives in the base of chalifais. They couldn't keep their knife there. And as a result, this now explains, this Bracha explains why in the Mishnah was this mishmar punished. Yeshaimer, there are those who say, says the Gemara, that wasn't the issue with this mishmar. It wasn't because of Miriam, Bas Bilga. Mishmarte Shayolavai, what happened was they used to come late. This mishmar, they would normally switch mishmaras every Shabbos, and they came late. So the group that was there before them, that would normally leave on Shabbos, the new group came, they had to stay a little late. Because they came late, says Rashi, clearly, it indicated to us that it wasn't chaviv, it wasn't beloved by them, it wasn't something that they were looking forward to do. So even though typically the shchenim of Rishayim don't benefit, normally we say Oila Rasha, Oila Shchena. Yet Shcheni Bilga, the neighbors of Bilga, they're Shchenim, Yeshevav, the group that was right near them, Nishtaku, they benefited. Shabilga, Lailam Chelekes B'darim, Yeshevav Achav B'tzaven. Because, like we learned earlier, normally the group that would come in on Shabbos, they would take their chelik, the lechem apanim, they would take mitzvah, the more chashiv side, where the Kaddish Kedah, where Kaddish Kadshim were shechted. When they left, they took bidarim, not as chashiv. But Bilga, this mishmar was punished. They always took bidarim, even when they came in, as a result of this ma'aseh, the Yeshaimer. And therefore, Yeshevav, who was the group before them, always, even when they left, they took mitzvah, because the group coming after them were punished to take in the dara. Okay. So we have two explanations why was the mishmar of Bilga punished, that their tabas was sealed, and the chalain where they kept the knife was also closed. There's Bishleim like the Shita that it's because the group came late, the mishmar came late. We understand now, how did the kansina l'kula mishmar understand why the whole mishmar was punished? They came late, they're punished. Elamanda Amar, Miriam bas Bilga, Shehemira Dasa, but if the reason why they were punished is like the first pshat, because Miriam, of what she did, that terrible Maisa, even if we just focus on the father, who was a Kain, because of what his daughter does, you punish him. Is Amar Abaya, says Abaya in, yes. Kidamri Inchi, like people say, Shusa de Yanuka Beshuka. The speech of a child, the words that come out of a child out in the market, O de Avua, O de Ime, is that what he heard either from his father or his mother? And if that's what she's saying about the Mizbeach, Lucas, it's quite probable that that's what she heard from her parents, and therefore the father should be punished. Says the Gemara, Mishum Avua v'Ime Kansina Lakula Mishmara. So because of what the father does to the mother, so now you're going to punish the entire Mishmar? Is Amar Baya Ayla Rasha Ayla Shchena? Yes, because Ayla Rasha Ayla Shchena. As a result of what she did, we may not necessarily punish the Mishmar, because she's not being punished. She never worked. But because of what she did, it affects her father, because Shusa de Yanuka. Once the father is affected and he's being punished, to the Rasha, the father, Ayla Rasha Ayla Shchena. Now that seems to be the end of the Gemara. What's Nagay over here? But the Gemara then ends, and the Gemara says, but we also have a cloud, Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shchene. That what's good for a tzaddik, like was just spoken about, Tov l'shchene, is also good for the people near the tzaddik. When the tzaddik benefits, the people around the tzaddik also benefit. Shenever, like it says, Imru tzaddik ki tov, ki prima l'leim yerchelu. Imru tzaddik, say to a tzaddik, or Imru lashon of shevach, as Hashem emercha hayom, praise the tzaddik, what he's done is good. Ki prima l'leim yerchelu lashon rabim, they also benefit. That the people, it starts off lashon yachid, the tzaddik, yerchelu, where many people benefiting, because when the tzaddik benefits, everybody benefits. So simple pshat why the Gemara brought it down is because we want to end the Mesechta b'chitayv the Marshas. You always want to end on a good note. So therefore it ends with Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shchena. But Rashi says even more. It says Rashi, because we learned that. We know that. It says Rashi, Memela Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shchena, if Ayla Rasha Ayla Shchena, and Hashem's midah of Tov is always meruba, is always greater, so then we can assume Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shchena, because Hashem's midah of Tov is even better. The Ben Yehuda adds even more. He says it's not extra. The Gemara is bringing a reason, a makar, to Ayla Rasha Ayla Shchena. How can you say Ayla Rasha Ayla Shchena? Why should we affect the Shchenim of a Rasha? What did they do wrong? It's the Rasha's fault. It's not their fault. Is Dr. Ben Yehuda, well, being that we have a cloud, Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shchena, so if you really want good in life, you could go to be near the tzaddik, and there's a lot of good to get. Why are you not there? Why are you by the Rasha? Elamai. It must be it's not important to you. It must be you're not machshav that. If you're not machshav that, so then Ayla Rasha l'shchena, you deserve to be punished also. So that's the reason for Ayla Rasha Ayla l'shchena, because there's so much good available in life. Why we do not go there? The Gemara ends off with the Gemara is ending with the klal of Shusa de Yanuka. Just a moment on the klal of Shusa de Yanuka. That when a child Shusa de Yanuka, the talk of a child b'shuka in the market, the avuo de ime, is the parent. It doesn't say that the talk of the child when they take a test, when they're in class, when they fill out. It says what they say in the market. When they're not being tested, the right answers. When you ask a child what's right and what's wrong, and you're testing him and he has to think of what's right, he can tell you what he's been told by other people. But when that child is b'shuk in the market and he's not being tested, so then the child, what does the child speak then? He speaks who he is. His real essence comes out. And what's the real essence of a child? Child's affected by what he hears in the home. The avuo de ime. And it doesn't say what the parents preach them, it doesn't say what the parents are telling them to say. It's what the father is and what the mother is. What's the natural, what's chashuv by the father, what's chashuv by the mother, that's what the child picks up on. It was unbelievable Maisa. Share Maisa. Unbelievable Maisa. That there was I'll make it quick, there was a trip in Eretz Yisroel. Some young kids were going on a trip into school, and they were going to a water park. And the whole bus, they pull up, a bunch of buses were going. One of the buses pull up, and they realized that there had been a confusion. The yeshiva was officially renting out the park. It wasn't the case, and it wasn't going to work out for them to go. The Rebbe told the boys, we're not going to be able to go. And the Rebbe knew the moment he says that, it's going to be terrible. He braced himself. And all of a sudden, one of the boys got up. One of the kids got up, and he said to all his friends, Guys, we have a chance for an Ashreinu moment. Well, the reason we're not going to the park is because obviously Hashem doesn't want us to go to the park. It doesn't work now. So we're going to serve Hashem by not going. We'll go another time. And he started singing Ashreinu Matov Chalkeinu, how lucky you are. It's a little kid, not the Rebbe telling them, the kid. The kid started doing it, his friends started doing it. The friends, they got the whole bus was dancing. And the bus turned around, went back to Yeshiva. The Rebbe told them we'll go another day. When the Rebbe got back, he went over to the principal. He said, I have to tell you something. And he told him what took place in the bus. And the principal said, who was that? He told him the name of the boy. He says, you're not going to believe it because there was another boy on another bus who did it. It was his younger brother. Same thing. I got to speak to the father. The principal called the father that night. And he told him what happened. And he said to the father, he said, what's going on in your home? He checked your mezuzahs recently. He says, what is it? He said, I don't know. And he didn't really have an answer. He says, please tell me, there's something unique going on. What do you say to your children? He said, I'll tell you, maybe it was one thing that happened. He said, a little while back, my wife was out with the kids and she had a lot of shopping, a lot of errands to do. It was a very hot day. Kids did not want to be out. So at the end of the trip, with the grocery shopping, she said, okay, we're going to buy a certain box of ices. All the kids will have a nice little treat. And they get to the car after schlepping and schwitzing, take out the ices, and they see the hashgacha wasn't good, wasn't a hashgacha the family used. So she didn't give it to them, and they got home, and she told her husband what happened. And the husband said, what? He says, hold on a second. Give me a little bit of time. The husband went out, and he bought a whole ton of nash. And he set up a table, and he made a beautiful, beautiful party, and he brought nash and a lot of good stuff for the kids. And he said to the kids, we're going to have an Ashreinu party. He says, you had ices in the car, and the reason you didn't have them is because Hashem said you're not supposed to have them. And that's what you did. That's unbelievable. We're making a Suda, an Ashreinu Suda. And they sang Ashreinu Matov Chalkeinu, and they had the Suda. He said, I don't know, so maybe that's what they saw. Shusa de Yanuka, Beshuka, the Avo, the Ime. It's coming time for Rosh Hashanah. When we blow the shofar, and the shofar is Lishmaya Kol Shofar, that we want to hear. We hear the sound of the shofar. And the sound is something that we hear. It's the cry of Kaddish Baruch Hu, of now we're Yeshenim, Rosh Hashanah, Shuvu Banim, Shovavim, Kaddish Baruch Hu is asking us to come back. And then it's our job as parents to transmit that to our children. Lishmaya, what they hear, what they truly hear, our essence. You blow into a shofar, it's that little side you blow into, not the big side. What comes out of the other side is heard very strong, but it's that deep inner essence that you blow with your breath that comes from the neshima, which is the neshama, which is the real you. You blow into the shofar, and that's what's heard by everybody. We should be zeicha to transmit the message of Hashem to our children. And what more beautiful way than like Elefant just mentioned, families that are involved in the Daf Yomi, that becomes the shus of the Yanuka, mamish, literally. Where's daddy? Where's Abba? Where's Tati? He's doing the Daf. Vacation, where's daddy? Daf. It becomes a normal thing in the home, not because you're preaching and not because you're telling them, because that's part of the day. That's what's chashiv. You don't tell them it's chashiv, you do it every day. And maybe they see that. That's chos, we should be zeicha to what the tzaddikim say, shusa di yanuka devu, they flip around the entire line, shusa di yanuka beshuka. Tzaddikim say the talk of a child, the learning, the ma'asim tovim beshuka, is a shaik, is a thigh. The avoid, the ime. Bra, kara de avoid, the ma'asim of a child is a schus for the parent. Our ma'asim should be a schus for our parents. And the schus of all the day we've heard from them, it should then be a schus back for them. A big thank you to All Daf for spreading Torah, spreading such holy shusa all over the world. And that becomes what the avua, what the ime are talking about. And a big, big thank you to Meridian and Mr. Ralph Hertzka for hosting tonight and for being such a strong supporter of what the All Daf and a supporter of Torah and of the Daf Yomi. Yashakala. Hadran Allah Chachalel, the Srikala Mesechta Succah, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov.
For the Hadran, we actually have someone here who's not just finishing Mesechta Succah, but making a Siyum on Shas, Mr. Mark Simonowitz.
Hadran Allah Mesechta Succah v'tam bali v'hadran chalon datech Allah Mesechta Succah v'tam bali v'datech chalon Like Nisishe Minach Mesechta Sukkah Tam Babil Nisishe Minach like Bama Dem Lo Bama Dasi Hiratom V'Nach Leinu Lo Senu Shetahei Teras Chum Nesenu B'Lamazeh Sehi Manu Le'Lam Abba Chanina Bar Papa Roim Bar Papa Nachman Bar Papa Achoi Bar Papa Abba Murray Bar Papa Rafram Bar Papa Rochish Bar Papa Succah Bar Papa Ada Bar Papa Dor Bar Papa Harab Nadan Leinu with Divrei Sarasla Befinu V'Fiyah Samcha Beiti Shavaniya Kolono Nachnu Tzetzuenu V'Tzetzoy Tzetzoenu Tzetzoy Ancha Beiti Sar Kolonia D'Shmecha V'Lamde Sarsecha L'Shma Me'ayvit Chakmeni Mitzvah Secha Kilaylam Hi Libi Samim B'Chukecha Laman Lo Evish Le'Elam Lo Yeshkach Pikudecha Kivam Chisani Baruch Atah Adonai Labdenu Chukecha Amen 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 Selavad Moedim Menachem L'Fanecha Adonai Le'enu V'Leo Seinu Shesamtecha Kenam Yeshrei Beis HaMedrash V'Leisamtecha Kenam Yeshrei Kronish Ona Mashkim V'Hei Mashkim Mana Mashkim El Divrei Torah V'Hei Mashkim El Dvarim B'Telam Anu Amelim V'Hei Amelim Anu Amelim U'Makal Sacha V'Hei Amelim Ein Makal Sacha Anu Rotim V'Hei Rotim Anu Rotim L'Chai Olam Haba V'Hei Rotim L'Er Shachas Shneim V'Ata L'Him Teridim L'Er Shachas Anshi Damim U'Mirma L'Yechtu Yimeim V'Ani Eftach Bach Yiratim V'Nach Adonai L'Hai Kshesh Azartan L'Sayim Mesechta Sukkah V'Tam Babli Kin Tazrein L'Haskell Mesechta Shesvar Machim U'Saimam L'Umoid Olam L'Shmor Latzes V'Kaim L'Kol Divrei Salm Tersecha B'Yava U'Schos Ka'Tanoim V'Maroim V'Salmidei Chacham Yam L'Lil Zari Shlei Samush Atayram Pi U'Pi Zari V'Zer Zari Adelim T'Skayim Bi B'Salechacha Tanch Eisach V'Shachacha Tishmar Alecha L'Akitzechi Hi Sichisecha Kivi Yirbo Yemecha V'Yisiv L'Chosh Neis Chayim Eirach Yam B'Yimina B'Smeila Eishachav Adonai Islam Yitain Adonai V'Rech Samay V'Shalom.
Mr. Jeff Weinberg, Kaddish.
Yisrael v'Yisrael Shmei Rabba. Yom Edihu Asil L'Aschadisa L'Achya Mesaya L'Asakal L'Chaya Almab L'Mechnei Karta D'Yerushalayim L'Shchalel Hechala B'Gavei L'Me'akar Pulchana N'Chra'a Me'ara'a L'Asa Pulchana D'Shmaya L'Asrei Yam L'Kucha Brichu B'Machuse V'Karei V'Yitzmach B'Kanei V'Karei Meshichei Chayachon M'Chan L'Chay D'Chol Beis Yisrael B'Aglav Zman Kariv V'Imru Amen. Hey Shmei Rabba Mevarach Li'Olam Li'Omel Mayois Barach V'Shtabach V'Yispar V'Shmavis Tasei V'Sadar V'Salei V'Salol Shmei Kedusha B'Richu Le'el M'Kal B'Chasa V'Shirasa Tishb'Chasa Nechemasa D'Amira B'Amav V'Imru Amen Ha'Yisrael V'Arabban V'Al Talmidein V'Al Kol Talmidei Samideon V'Al Kol Mandas G'Baraisa V'Yiva Asrar V'Tishay Adein V'Di V'Chol Asar V'Yasar Yehei L'Hon Chol Shlom Rabba Chiz Chin V'Chiz Rachmei Rachmei B'Chai Richei Mizone Richei for Karmi Kardam Abahan Bi V'Shmaya V'Ara V'Imru Amen Yehei Shalom Mishmai B'Chayim Tov Malenu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen Oseh Shalom B'Rama V'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Mazel tov to all the Messiahim. As we started, Smechim Mitzesam V'Sasam Avayam. So we want to allow people to be Smechim Mitzesam. So our last speaker tonight is Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who is the executive director of the Orthodox Union.
Mazel tov, shkoyach. I'm grateful for the opportunity to come here today because it made me feel a lot better. This is the second time that I had the privilege to be in this room. The last time it was as a Beis Knesset. I had the privilege to be appointed to my position at the end of January of 2020 at a board meeting in the evening at 11 Broadway, where the OU is located. And that night I stayed over in a hotel in the area, and I was guided that there's a 7 o'clock Shacharis at Meridian. I got up in the morning. I came looking for this building. I was wandering around for somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes till I found the building. And I'm saying to myself, Hauer, you're a farmer from Baltimore. What are you trying to do working in Manhattan? But tonight, we walked over from 11 Broadway, about 5 people, New Yorkers, and we wandered around for 5 or 10 minutes till we found the building. So, Baruch Hashem, it's not just me. Tov l'tzadik, tov l'shchenai is a nice memra. You would ask, maybe it's Pirkei Avos. Okay, so it's an Agadata in the Gemara. Good for the tzaddik, good for the neighbor. The truth is that it's the foundation of a mitzvah de'oraisa, a very fundamental mitzvah de'oraisa, one of the core original mitzvahs, that the way the Rambam sets them up in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, which is the mitzvah of L'dov Kabbai, to attach yourself to the Shechina. The Rambam writes about it at length in Hilchos Deis. I think it's Perek Vav or Perek Zayin. I think Perek Zayin. The Rambam writes that it's a mitzvah a person has to understand. He begins and he says that Derech Briyasai Shel Adam Liyas Nimshach. It is the way of a person to be drawn in his ways, in his thinking, Acharei v'Chaveirav, after his friends, after his peers, Naya Kimina Ganshe B'Dinasai, behaving in the way of his society. And therefore writes the Rambam that it's a mitzvah for a person to choose well, to live amongst good people, strong people, people whose values, whose way of life you would want to be affected by. You would want to rub off on you. Your environment, the environment that you choose to live in, is critical and it's formative. It's a mitzvah de'oraisa, a core mitzvah, to take advantage of this reality that Tov l'tzadik and Tov l'shcheinai. I saw once a beautiful, beautiful idea from Rav Breuer, Zichrono Livracha. Rav Breuer wrote, we have many names of the Rabbeinu Shalom, many different terms. We speak about them, speak especially in the season, names that imply midas hadin, midas harachamim. But there's a term, Shechina, which we use to describe the Rabbeinu Shalom. What's the meaning and the association of Shechina? And Rav Breuer suggested, and he didn't just suggest it once as a taich, but he used this as part of his vernacular, that Shechina is like its shoresh, which is shachin. And the Shechina, when we speak about the Shechina, we speak about the Rabbeinu Shalom as an active presence around whom we orient our lives. Gan Eden, l'ruach hayayim, the Rabbeinu Shalom was there. We were living in his presence. When you speak about the Shechina, you don't speak about an abstraction, a Rabbeinu Shalom up there. You speak about it as something that's surrounding you, that you surround, that's part of your life. Shechina, living in Hashem's presence. Perhaps one might say that the Mesechta Succah, where we live, B'tzila Dehemnusa, where we live surrounded by Hashem's presence, appropriately, would be a Mesechta which would end with Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shcheinai. It's well known, they say it in the name of the Avnei Nezer, others, that there are just two mitzvahs that you're makayim constantly, just by being. And what are they? Yishuv Eretz Yisroel and Yeshiva Succah. Right? Teishvu kein taduru. You eat, you sleep, you breathe. You're doing it in the presence of the Rabbeinu Shalom. And that's the mitzvah itself. But how do we manage that beyond sitting in a sukkah? There's a fascinating taich from Rav Chaim Volozhner on a famous Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Yafe Talmud Torah im derech eretz. And there's a linguistic question that we have to ask ourselves, which really is addressed exactly in this context as well in the Taisus Yeshanim. And that is when you say in Lashon Kodesh, A im B, or Aleph im Beis. Is there an Ikar v'Tafel? Which one is the main and which one is the side? How does it work grammatically? And instinctively you would say that the second is really the Ikar. It's good to have Aleph with Beis. Beis is the main thing. It's good to have ketchup with your French fries. Yafe Talmud Torah im derech eretz. Everybody knows that asay Torah's chakva. You're supposed to have the Torah, supposed to be the main thing. What does it mean, Yafe Talmud Torah im derech eretz? So Reb Chaim Volozhner, there in Pirkei Avos, in the Ruach Chaim, says something fantastic. He says, of course, Torah is the Ikar. But what it's saying here is that even when you're not in the moments, which are so-called the moments of Talmud Torah, even when you're engaged in derech eretz, even when you're engaged in your work, it's beautiful to have Talmud Torah together with the work. Chaim Volozhin wrote that when the person is driving the plow, they should be still orangutan in the taisvas that they learned that morning. That the Torah should still be there with them as they're engaged in derech eretz. It's a fascinating taish. But if you stop and you think about it, it's very sobering. It's very sobering for 20th and 21st century Jews. Because you can understand how you can do that if you're driving a plow or a truck or you're pushing a paintbrush. But as you know, many, many of us engage in areas of work where you can't be thinking about something else while you're working. You're trying to complete a deal and your head is going to be on the taisvas. That's malpractice. That's not right for your client. It's not right for your boss. You have to be completely thinking about what you're doing. If Rav Chaim Volozhiner is right in this beautiful vision of Yafet Talmud Torah and Derech Eretz, it's completely lost on us. The way we've chosen to plot our own careers, our way of making a living. So how do we deal with it? And I think that what we're doing here tonight is representative of two answers to that question. First of all, we're in a boardroom of a place where people come for derech eretz, where they study Torah, where there's a daf hayomi shir, where there are gatherings for Torah, for tefillah, for tzedakah v'chesed. And what that does is, yes, it's true. I'm sure that when mincha ends, or the daf hayomi shir ends, you got to get back to work on what you're working with all of your head. But you are doing it in a context, in an environment, which is Talmud Torah in Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz isn't left alone. It's not a sequestered corner. There's Torah here in your place of work. And that's a magnificent privilege. That's Shechina. That's making sure that wherever you go, you're there neighboring in the presence of the Rebbeinu Shalom and the Torah. That's the way of life. The second answer to this, the second very contemporary answer to this very contemporary problem is All Daf. Is the way All Daf is used. It's, grabbing a minute as you're traveling. Yeah, it can't be. I don't know if you could have All Daf playing in the background while you're working on the deal. But I don't know about you. If I have to switch it to some underground method of transportation or something like that, can't make a phone call, tired of looking at the next email. Listen to a little bit of the daf, listen to something on the daf. What All Daf has done to take the Torah out of a corner, the Beis Medrash specifically, and to allow it to be our shochen, our neighbor, the presence that's with us all the time. It's not the only tool that does it. It's a tool that does it well. We at the OU, who have as the central mission of the organization to grow the engagement wherever it can be of Jews with Torah and mitzvahs, and where we know that the most potent tool in that is Talmud Torah. What's happened under the leadership of Rabbi Schwed to enhance and grow the presence of Torah in people's lives in Kol Yisroel is breathtaking and our greatest zechus. I want to just end with a thought with perhaps further relevance for these days, Yemei HaSlichos, a few days before Rosh Hashanah. Certainly, the days of Shifti B'Veis Hashem fit for this idea of trying to be surrounded by the Rebbeinu Shalom. But the Gemara ended with something which is surprising. It said, generally, the Shechenim, the neighbors of Rishoyim, they don't do well. But Shechenei Bilga, the neighbors of Bilga, were an exception. As Rabbi Weingot read in the Siyum, they were the exception. They were nistakru, they gained, because they got whatever Bilga gave up. It went to the next mishmar. It went to others. But why? Why? If it's a rule, why Why were Shchenei Bilga an exception? Remember what she said, Miriam Bas Bilga? Miriam Bas Bilga was a disaster story. She was an intermarried, assimilated Jewess, went married a Yavani. Disaster. And she was angry. She came into the Beis HaMikdash and she banged the Mizbeach. Lukus, Lukus, how long are you going to consume the money of the Jewish people and not be there for them at their time of need? But you know, not everything about what Miriam Bas Bilga did was terrible. We had a Mashiach of the Jewish people. His name was Gideon. The Kaddish Baruch Hu appeared to him on Pesach. He said, go, I'm coming to you. And Gideon said, Rabbi Shalom, last night we sat at the Seder and we spoke about the miracles you do for Kol Yisroel. Where are they? Ad Mosai. Until when? Where are they? The Rajan wasn't upset with Gideon. He said to Gideon, Lech b'chaycha chazeh. Go with this strength of yours, that you know to stand, that you know to feel pain for Klal Yisrael. Miriam Bas Bilga went off the reservation. How many, whenever, the Daf Hayomi is a project which was created by Rabbi Meir Shapira at the Knessia Gedolah of Agudas Yisrael. And the Agudah always appropriately dedicates every Siyum Hashas to the Kaddish, to the people who died, who were killed, Al Kiddush Hashem, in the Holocaust. And every time you get together at the Siyum, and you just think about what's here and what this represents. And you see how people stayed in the game. They stayed in the game at the same time as, not Tainus, which said, I'm leaving, but that heartfelt feeling for Klal Yisrael. Rabbanu Shalom, Ad Mosai. Until when? The Jewish people have tzaras. Rabbanu Shalom, you saved us before. Save us again. There was something of the flavor of what Miriam Bas Bilga said that her neighbors benefited from. There was something awful, but there was something good. And Afal Pi, even though generally Shchenim Rishoyim don't profit, the Shchenim of Bilga did. And as we celebrate this Siyum, and the continued Siyum, and the continued faithfulness of Klal Yisrael, we also can stand, especially as we come to Rosh Hashanah, after a year, who knows, and also maybe exhibit a little bit of that passion. Passion which is a passion of emunah, a passion that knows that the Rabbi stood with us so much, all the time. We're here, we're learning, we're thriving. 10,000 people every day use this app. It's mind-boggling, and it's besides for the thousands and thousands of others. It's unbelievable. That koyach, the koyach of Gideon, to turn to the Rabbanu Shalom and say, okay, now we have to go further. May we cry out well. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu hear. And may we be zeichet to Gula Shleima, Gula Kreva, Meridian. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everybody. Mazel tov on the assignment. Thank you again, Meridian, for hosting. We all be zeichet to approach Rosh Hashanah with a renewed passion for learning, and we should all be zeichet to Ksiv V'Chasim HaTeva.